files and film reels, binders. It's a cacophony of things. It's just kind of, it's putting together a puzzle basically. My name is Benjamin Hedges. I am the senior archival technician here at Archives. By processing, of course, I mean taking in the items that we are taking in the collections or donations that we have in archives, putting them, either organizing them, sorting them by either how they're donated, or if there's a way that I think that can be better organized, I'll organize them that way. Getting them in archival containers, archival folders so that they can be preserved better, and putting them into our online system, which we call Archive Space, which is basically, in so many words, a kind of a catalog for our archival materials, and making them searchable and discoverable. It's at times very exciting. It's at times very tedious and repetitive, but we always have the pipelines. When you walk into our main office up here on the 5th floor, the first thing you're going to notice on the left-hand side are just a wall of shelves that are just occupied by a never-ending line of boxes and files and film reels, binders. It's a cacophony of things. So that's the first thing you're going to notice. And then in the middle of the room, we have various tables set up at varying heights that you can either stand up and work, you can either sit down and really dig into work. Those tables are also full of things and boxes and binders and scraps of paper that those tables are generally reserved for my students who will be working on their respective projects for the week or for the day. And then in the back we have a couple computers also just overlaid with materials, and it's just, there's stuff everywhere. A lot of the collections that we've taken in recently are more, again, akin to the budget and asset kind of stuff, which is there's already kind of an organization to it. It's just a matter of making it accessible to a public that would want to view that stuff, making it searchable. So starting with figuring out, okay, do we have materials that are already labeled? We'll organize those, start to figure out the proper titles, proper names for those type of documents. Are there relationships in those documents? If we have, excuse me, if we have mortgage documents pertaining to specific types of land or specific types of purchases, do we have the deeds to those type of documents that go with those mortgages or those legal documents? We try to put those together. And then just started building those relationships and making sure they're housed in a way that they're efficiently accessible. And that's, sometimes that's very hard to do. Sometimes you just kind of have to wing it, and down the line you might get some more information or more stuff that you have to put in separate boxes and try to create the relationships online. But that's kind of how I would apply it to collections that were more of like groups or people trying to find those relationships, trying to get an idea of what I have, if I have correspondence from this person to specific people, getting those organized and seeing what those relate to. So if those correspondence relate to activities they did in school, I would see if I have paperwork on those activities that they did, and I would try to get those together and create the relationships that way and tell that story. So it's just kind of, it's putting together a puzzle basically. It's spreading out all the pieces and trying to find ways that they connect. That's not always going to happen. It's never sometimes that easy, but you go into it with that mentality and do the best you can with it. I have a bachelor's degree, but I also have a history minor. So I've always kind of had an interest in history. And I guess I guess the way I can say it shaped my perspective. It now I feel like I'm participating in the historical record in some capacity. So, and obviously it's a much bigger partnership with a lot of people that help that. But I feel like I'm a lot more conscious of historical record, of artifacts and things like that, and how important they are, because I think a lot of people think of that stuff and they kind of put it aside, or oh, we can just throw that away. So like even things that I own personally, it's like, oh, do I want to get rid of this now? This was something special to my life, my childhood, my own historical record. So it's changed my perspective and how I treat old documents, old photographs, the things that I think about when looking at those items. It's changed my perspective and how I treat them and how I value them. There's always this idea of either archivists are either just the keeper of records, or if that they're the kind of people that take in items and information and records and create a historical record, create a story of a particular subject. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes from that. That I think, even for me thinking about it now, because before I took this class, I was thinking more in archives in terms of just like a practical matter. Okay, we've got stuff, need to process it, need to name it, need to put it online, put it on shelf, everything's good. But now that I'm thinking about this class, thinking about theory, thinking about value and importance, now I kind of have a better perspective of how I describe things. One of the important things I've been thinking about recently, and it's something I've kind of been writing about in a paper, is implicit bias I might have. Things, if I'm writing about certain subjects or certain people, it's important for me to like reach out and understand better how I describe things, how I put information in, especially for things involving like marginalized groups. Even though there's no collections I'm working on right now that pertain to that. Down the line, I may get something on Native Americans. Down the line, I may get something on Black histories and things like that. And I feel like taking this class and thinking about more being part of the historical record and the stories I want to tell, I need to be more cognizant about the things I say, the things I write, how I describe things, the kind of story I want to tell, if it's really representative of that group, if it tells a proper history. Do I involve people of those groups to help me in contributing to that kind of description? Those are things I start thinking about. So that's what I mean about participating in the historical record, because if I considered it just me creating a historical record, that's not really a true historical record, because it's a very subjective kind of ideology, I guess, to have. So I feel like I'm rambling, but I feel like that's kind of how I think about it now in terms of participating. For me personally, it can be as simple as we're creating a strong resource for students and researchers to get information about OSU. I think that's one of our key goals, is to build a good historical record about the history of OSU, about the people that attended it, about the great research that was done here, about the people that have interacted with this institution. So I think that's one of the core things to me, is being a valuable resource that can be accessible, can be usable, that tells the story of Oklahoma State. And then all other things that we collect for is just the kind of the cherry on the top about some things that state of Oklahoma, prominent members of the state of Oklahoma, which includes politicians, famous individuals in the state of Oklahoma. I'm very excited to get the Zaro collection, processed, see that collection become more prominent in the general archival collection, because I know we're working very hard to collect more for the Native American story, Native American art culture. We have the collection from Angie DeBow, who was a prominent historian for Native American history, and I think that's an important function of the archives too, is telling an honest and very descriptive story of the Native American experience in Oklahoma. So I think just being a valuable resource is what's most important. What I think is most important.